Going off is a occupational hazard, and it doesn't matter if you were the late great Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, or the current Ferrari driver Lewis Hamilton. We can all have an off at any certain point.
Forget the headlines. Here's what Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari really means. Watch now.
I don't think that little off will faze him in the slightest because it happens to everyone. Race team, like team bosses like myself at the time, you got used to it. That's what you have boxes and boxes and boxes of spares for. And racing drivers need to push cars to the limit. If they don't know where the limit is, they're not going quick enough.
Hello and welcome to Formula for Success. I'm David Coulthard, and this week I'm not alone. Yes, he's back, the one, the only. It's Eddie Jordan.
Ah, the growler! Ah!
Elite teams expect these moments. Ferrari's best eras have been built on fearless driving and maximizing every bit of performance. These incidents aren't failures. They're lessons that help define champions over the season.
I haven't lost it in Santa. I was afraid was going to steal it from me, but, you know, he left me with the old tones.
Yeah, no, the first little growl there sounded a bit more sort of tame and pussycat, but then you came with the full voice.
Because that's when I'm using the word growler. David, I'm worried people have different explanations as what the growler actually means, but in my case, I think they're talking about me. So let's just leave it like that for the sake of good order for the programme.
So, EJ, how have you been down there in South Africa? You know, you like many other Brits, head there for the winter.
Eddie's humor always keeps things entertaining, but let's shift gears. With the pressure mounting on Ferrari, their next few races could define their entire season. Strategy execution and reliability are more crucial than ever.
I'm in the middle of a chemo cycle at the moment, but happen to be on today, as we're doing this recording, in good shape. And I must say, guys and girls, don't be afraid. Go and get tested. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to be just like a gramophone record going round and round. But the reality is that there is a great chance of survival. There's an unbelievable opportunity of good medical care everywhere in the world now. And chemotherapy, they seem to have their act together. So, DC, thank you for asking. Cape Town has been brilliant. I've had 4 chemos so far. Another plan 2, but you never know if it hasn't completely gone. Might have to go for another 1 or 2. It's not something you wouldn't want your very best friend to have chemo, because it's not something that's very desirable. But at the same time, the outlook and the future is great. So God bless those guys in the medical field.
Yeah, well, here, and thank you, EJ, for sharing that with us. Well, look, good to know that you're dealing with it as best you can. Good to know you're in fiery spirit as we were getting ready to get into this recording of this episode of FFS. You're your typical punchy self, so let's get straight into it then. A lot to look forward to, as within several weeks we'll have the opening of the season. But ahead of that, we've had the big news of the year. We've had Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari, officially unveiled as a Ferrari driver, looking splendid in his suit and tie and trench coat outside Enzo Ferrari's old house. And it's been really remarkable to see just how big a news story this has been. So I guess a couple of things, EJ. You know Piero Ferrari. I don't believe you were around when Enzo Ferrari was with us, but you may have met him. You can tell us.
Yeah.
But this is huge news for Formula One, and we've got to hold our breath to see just what Lewis can deliver.
Great to hear EJ's fighting spirit. Just like Ferrari, always pushing forward. With Hamilton now in red, this isn't just about speed. It's about leadership, experience, and a mindset shift. If Ferrari executes this right, they could be on the verge of something historic.
Well, you say that. First of all, a quick word on Maranello and Enzo's house. When Luca de Montezemolo was actually running the show, we used to have all the team principal meetings at Maranello in the old house. And I've got several old photographs of everyone, Bernie, all the people, and Frank Williams, Ron Dennis, myself and every single other one of the teams, even teams that people don't realize now, like LaRousse and Minardi and stuff like that. So they were big times. There were an awful lot of teams then. I think there was 18, 19 teams. So it has changed a lot. Not always for the better, but at the same time it's changed. But what I thought was unbelievably eye-catching, that photograph of Lewis Hamilton in that coat, it just depicts why I think Ferrari went for him. His box office, absolutely. And please check, I think you will find as close to 6 million likes were clicked on about the way he looked and his appearance. It's a very stylish photograph, and it'll be iconic. That photograph will be used for many, 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 many years to come, David, because of the way it is. And it depends, of course, how he gets on, but at the same time, I think the photograph will be used. We hear recently about the crash, which is unfortunate because I also saw the photograph of the many, many, many thousands of the Tifosi that turned up to take photographs, wish him well, just on a little reconnaissance trip with the car. So you can imagine what it's going to be like on Grand Prix Day. I think he will be a huge draw. I think he's not just box office for Formula One. I think he's box office everywhere, particularly in the Americas, in Asia. We know about Europe. I'm totally warm to the idea that Ferrari, for all sorts of reasons, particularly commercial, made the right decision.
Hamilton's arrival is bigger than just racing. It's a cultural shift for Ferrari. The Tifosi are already embracing him, and his global appeal could elevate Ferrari's presence in markets they've long sought to dominate.
Yeah, there's no question it has absolutely kept Formula One on the front, not just sports pages, but on the front pages. And as we know, Lewis has been popular in America before Formula One became really popular in America. So, yeah, it's big, big news. But of course, this isn't a personality or a column inches World Championship. It's a points World Championship. So get your crystal ball out. What is going to happen? We've got Charles Leclerc, considered one of the fastest drivers over a single lap that has ever driven a race car. He's been, let's say, not as consistent in his race performances. You've got Lewis, the most successful driver in every sense, other than the fact that he equals Michael Schumacher with 7 World Championships. It could have been 8, it could have been 9, it could have been much more. So what do we expect? You know, a lot of people concerned about how his final year at Mercedes went. It can't just be that he was feeling a little bit, you know, oh, this car doesn't quite suit me and my mind's already taken a step off to Ferrari. You know, he's a natural-born winner.
David, I love what you say. Very difficult to disagree with any of it. But at the end of the day, George Russell grabbed that car by the horns and he made it do different things to what Lewis was. Now, Lewis is possibly, you know, he's been driving since he's been 5, 7 or 8 years of age. So he's not going to drive something that's not up to his liking. He made the point, I don't know if you saw a very private recent interview with him, where he had said to Toto and to Bono that there was something seriously wrong with the back of the car, that it wasn't conveying confidence in the corner, and he feared that it was the aerodynamics over the wing or underwing or whatever system it was, but he just didn't feel that the car was giving him the confidence to push to the level that he needed to do to get pole positions and race wins. But coming back to the point that you've so rightly made, Leclerc is there now 7 years. He knows everybody. He knows all the people and what to say, the language. He's the darling of Maranello. However, he will be surprised. I think he had a certain way with him over Sainz and Carlos. We can talk about him because I have an issue that I want to bring up about Williams and stuff there.
There's no doubt Leclerc is the heart of Ferrari, but Hamilton brings an entirely different mentality. He's not here to play second fiddle. He's here to win. If Ferrari gives them equal machinery, the internal power struggle could shape the entire season.
But anyway, look, as far as I'm concerned, I think Lewis will hit the ground running. Well, I don't want to say hit the ground running. I think it'll take him 2 or 3 races. I would urge Leclerc to get on his bike at the early stage, because that's when Leclerc is going to show certain amounts of dominance. However, as the season unfolds, as the people show more and more love for him, particularly the Italian fraternity, the Tifosi, but also the country, because this is a national team. And I really think that Lewis wants to and will embrace the love that it projects.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And Lewis is somebody that is more than capable of sort of soaking up that adulation. Much was made overnight about his recent test in Barcelona. He had a small off there. You know, any small off you can call a crash. And I was at the Autosport Awards last night and walking the red carpet. The more tabloidy journalists that were invited to that were all going, oh, you know, what have you heard about the crash? You know how these things get sort of tabloided over the top. Going off is a occupational hazard, and it doesn't matter if you were the late great Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, or the current Ferrari driver Lewis Hamilton. We can all have an off at any certain point. And I see it as simply as this. He has to get used to the control systems in that Ferrari, the power delivery. You know, we're dealing with hybrid engines, so it's not the sort of natural torque acceleration of an internal combustion engine. You know, electrical energy comes in like that. And I suspect it was just, you know, he's so embedded in his mind about the Mercedes hybrid Formula One engine that he was simply caught out. But that's exactly why I agree with you, that it'll take a few races, because there's the testing that a driver does where you are very consciously going through the ABCs of, you know, the braking, the turn-in, the throttle application. You know, you're in that space because you're developing the car and giving the feedback to the engineers. And then, of course, there's racing where you are just instinctively seeing and doing. You're logging away what the car is doing on lap 5 or lap 10 or all of the good things that you need to do to continue to give the feedback. But it's just your instinctive self when you're in a Grand Prix. So there's 2 different elements of being a race driver, isn't there?
Well, yeah, exactly. David, you're the race car expert. And what's going through Lewis's mind and little offs here and that, I don't think that little off will faze him in the slightest, because it happens to everyone. Race team, like team bosses like myself at the time, you got used to it. That's what you have boxes and boxes and boxes of spares for. And racing drivers need to push cars to the limit. If they don't know where the limit is, they're not going quick enough. And that's the issue. I'd rather see Lewis make these smaller errors at this stage than on the racetrack or the qualifying track or whatever it is. He will be given plenty of time by Ferrari. Look, this is probably one of the key, probably for 20, 30, 40 years, I don't know, but it's a huge signing for Ferrari, huge investment for Ferrari. And I think Ferrari will make and build more road cars and will have a bigger profit center because of Lewis. So they will be able to absolutely adequately offset any outside income or expenditure that they would have had with Lewis. It will be justified. I've absolutely no doubt that it was a calculated financial, commercial decision by Alcon, and I think that they'll recoup that manyfold.
Small mistakes in testing mean nothing. What matters is how Hamilton adapts to Ferrari's unique demands. His ability to analyze and develop a car is second to none. But that doesn't mean instant results. It could take several races before we see his true potential in red. Meanwhile, Leclerc will be keen to establish himself as the undisputed leader of the team. Ferrari has brought in Hamilton for his experience and championship mindset, but internal team dynamics will be just as crucial to their success.
Yeah, the way I look at it is that whatever the high water Mark is, it just helps everyone else within the sport. So if Lewis is now the highest paid driver in Formula One, that gives Max a reference point in his management in the next negotiation. You know, you use that with Adrian Newey, Aston Martin. It helps everybody within the industry in a time when Formula One is growing and continuing to see bigger and bigger returns for the commercial rights holder, Liberty Media. Just wanted to touch on, and I mentioned there, the Autosport Awards last night, they celebrated the contribution of Bernie Ecclestone, an old buddy of yours. He was telling on stage some funny stories. You managed to avoid any of the, well, I'm going to imagine you were in the segment where when he was asked, did he have any regrets? And he said, I've made so many mistakes, not one stands out that he wanted to share. But he did share a little tidbit about Frank Williams, where he said that in the early days of Williams Grand Prix engineering, Frank was always be at him saying, can I borrow 5,000? Can I, you know, always doing the sort of blagging extra money that I know you used to have to do when you ran Jordan. And then he made the reference to the fact that as soon as he gave money to Frank, he then headed off to the King's Road to buy some cashmere jumpers. So he was suggesting that Frank wasn't actually spending it all on the race team. Now, when you were asking Bernie for some upfront money, did every single penny go into the race team?
Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari doesn't just shake up the grid, it resets the financial landscape. If Max Verstappen's camp wasn't already looking at the numbers, they certainly are now. This kind of shift cements F1's commercial growth, and Ferrari is leading the charge both on and off the track.
Of course not. Don't be silly. Why would I answer that? You know, the thing is, first of all, getting money out of Bernie was no easy task. But generally speaking, he would ask for figures. He'd say, look, Eddie, you need five. Mine wasn't 5,000, mine was 5 million, or 3 million or 2 million. So it used to catch his breath a little bit. But I'd sit down in front of him and we'd go to lunch in his little pub around the corner, and I'd explain to him why I needed it and could we reduce it. You see, the differences between Frank Williams in those days was that there was very little money coming from, if you like, the team principals. You know, Frank was there at the forefront of that. We must remember he was a very leading light in that area. But in my day, we were due money from that we would get paid the following year, and I was looking for an advance. And Bernie's idea of an advance was, yes, but it comes with a little caveat, which is a 10% charge. Now, I suppose nowadays, financially, 10% is not that much, but in those early days, it was a fortune. But nevertheless, he took his money. You knew what you were getting yourself into. You never quibbled, otherwise you shouldn't go there. And you took your pain or your profit, whichever it was. But I can only speak volumes about this man. Yes, he's the toughest, hardest-nosed bastard ever was created on this planet. But, you know, I learned so much from him. And I'd have to say that a major part of my fabric and my characteristic in terms of how I ran a team is directly as a result of what I learned and grew up in the company of him. I became his reasonably close friend. We used to go to the football up to Chelsea together. He was notorious. He'd pay for nothing. We'd get the bus there. We could take the bus back to number 14 to outside the door. The guy, like, you can't imagine the fortunes he's got. But yet, he just was so goddamn grounded. You know, Slavica, which was most of the time that I was around, Slavica was his wife. And what a grounded lady she was. She was from Croatia, and she was just an absolute classic.
F1 back then wasn't just about racing. It was about financial survival. Bernie's terms may have been tough, but he made sure the sport remained an elite club of the smartest operators. Today's teams might have corporate backing, but that old-school edge still separates the best from the rest.
Yeah, well, there you go. You, I'm sure, have got many stories from that time. Well, just conscious of your time on this particular episode, just looking for a little update. You touched on him earlier in this recording, Adrian Newey. He's, I guess, getting pretty much toward the end of his time working on RB17, I believe it's called, the road car project, the ultimate, well, it's not a road car, is it? It's the ultimate track car. And then when does he officially put pencil to paper? Because he doesn't use CAD-CAM drawing systems. He's an old school drawing board man. When does he first put a pencil on a piece of Aston Martin paper and start that design process?
5th, 6th of March. So his little holiday, his little gardening leave is coming fast to a close. He's here in Cape Town with me. Would have been on this show, David. He was very keen, but unfortunately, we didn't quite ring him early enough because he had an appointment. But we're having breakfast tomorrow together before he flies off. And we'll say our goodbyes, but who knows, he'll be back. But, you know, he spends a lot of time here. As you probably know, Amanda is South African. They have a couple of homes and they enjoy their time here. They sometimes send their dogs down here. And the great thing about Adrian is that he's just so easy. We were at dinner last night together with Mike and Angie Rutherford of Mike and the Mechanics and Genesis. Incidentally, I give them a little plug because I'm playing with them tonight at the Grand Casino on stage. After all those times of bits of illnesses that we've talked about, I'm back gigging, David. I've got my drumsticks with me. And believe it or not, somebody that we talked about you, because you will know who he is, Phil Collins's young son, Nick. My God, what an absolute genius on drum kit. It's just a legend to behold. I think I sent FFS some little notes of that. So, yeah, I'm playing tonight, and I can't wait to be there. Adrian and Amanda will be at it. So we're seeing a lot of them, and they're enjoying the last few days of freedom, so to speak.
It's fascinating how Newey keeps blending classic design principles with modern innovation. His transition to Aston Martin could be one of the biggest game changers of the next decade, especially with their ambition to break into the top tier. This move could define the team's future.
Well, pass on my regards to them. And interesting little tidbit for you and maybe our listeners that when you mention Phil Collins, Phil and I are co-godparents to Mark Stewart's son, Marcus. And Marcus is dating Guy Liberty's daughter. Guy Liberty, for those who don't know, is the founder of Cirque du Soleil, a friend to Formula One, a friend to you, EJ. So we're all linked. We're all linked in some way. So, and of course, Phil, as a final tidbit, bought Sir Jackie Stewart and Lady Helen Stewart's house in Switzerland, which was called Clayton House, the house that the Stewart boys were brought up in. And I don't know if you ever went out there.
I certainly was, but it was with Jacques Villeneuve, if you remember, and Craig Pollock. Yes, I remember skiing there in Villars. We did a couple of charity, so the 24-hour race, Villars race. I helped to organise it, and we got some of the profits from the sharing of that charity. So very familiar. Funny you should say that. Coming home from that party last night was a lady, Paul McGinley's wife, Ali McGinley, and she said in her lifetime, one of the nicest young men that she's met ever was young Marcus Stewart. So he comes with a very high reputation. So well done to you, Marcus. You're carrying on a great tradition from Helen and Jackie all the way down to the Stewart boys. And, you know, it's so nice to see kids growing up so well. David, you've got your Dayton, who's also in that category. But so nice to see kids making it for themselves, but also being respectful of where life is and who people are.
Well, life, as you know, passes quickly, EJ. We blinked and we ended up being the age we are. And as you've experienced and you've shared with us very kindly, it has its challenges. So I think at this point, it's probably a good moment for us to wrap this particular episode up. And yeah, EJ, enjoy the final weeks that you have in South Africa and look forward to being in the studio with you, face to face, listening to the growler. So I'd just like to thank our dear listeners for joining. And remember, you can get in touch with us on social media at F1 for Success and send your question in to ffs@whisper.tv. It's bye from me, David Coulthard, and it's bye from the growler.
Happy New Year, everybody. And in case you've forgotten, and time has passed us all too quickly, one little growl for our friends on FFS. Arrgh!
The F1 world is filled with legendary figures and fascinating connections, but at its core, this sport is about one thing: winning. Ferrari, the most storied team in F1 history, knows this better than anyone. Yet, despite all their resources and talent, the championship has eluded them for far too long. 2024 presents a unique opportunity, especially with potential shifts in Red Bull's dominance. If Ferrari can refine their race strategy and maximize performance at every circuit, they could finally break the cycle of near misses. The talent is there. The execution will define their season.